Hi everybody, this is Bonnie Barker with Bonnie Bay Crochet, and today I have something very special for you. This is called Big Hearts, Little Hearts Baby Blanket, and it features both big and little popcorn hearts. Let me go ahead and show you some more photos right here. For this project, I'm going to be using some yarn from Lamb Shop Kits called Prized. This is 100% baby alpaca, and each of these hanks has 100 grams, 291 yards, or 266 meters. It is a 3-ply sport weight, which is also considered a number 2 weight yarn in the US. This is beautifully hand-dyed yarn. Of course, feel free, if you don't want to use this high-quality yarn, feel free to substitute with another sport weight yarn. The hooks that I'm recommending, I'm going to be using the size H or 8 or 5.00 millimeter crochet hook to begin with, and this will be our gauge hook. For the large paneled popcorn sections, I'm going to be using a larger hook, one size up, which is the size I or 9 or 5.50 millimeter crochet hook. Of course, if you choose a different weight yarn, make sure that you use hooks that match the yarn that you use, and be sure that you use your gauge hook and then one size larger. I'm also recommending that you have a size G or 6 or 4.00 millimeter crochet hook, and as always, a pair of sharp scissors and a yarn needle handy. To begin, we're going to start by using our size H or 8 or 5.00 millimeter crochet hook, and we are going to make a slip knot and a starting chain of 127 chains. For row 1, we are going to begin working a row of single crochets. We're going to start in the second chain from the hook, and we work a single crochet there, and in each chain all the way across. I am working on just the side or in one of the V's of this chain rather than the back bump, because that is my preference, and also because at the end of this project we are going to work a perimeter round, which is going to cover the remaining part of this chain. So make sure as you crochet across into this chain that it doesn't curl too much. A little bit of curling is normal and is okay, but if it's extreme, you may need to take out the chain and redo it using the larger crochet hook, and then return to your smaller or the gauge hook. Oftentimes, if people are very tight on their chain, that can be a little difficult to deal with later on. So it's best to deal with it at the beginning. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and finish these single crochets all the way across the row. After completing row 1, you should have a total of 126 stitches. Let's go ahead and turn for row 2, and it's just another row of single crochet. So we chain 1 and working through the both of the loops like we normally would, we're going to work single crochets all the way across the row. This is what you should have after completing those first 2 rows. Now for the next 2 rows, this will be for rows 3 and 4. We're going to work the low front ridge. We're going to start with a chain 1. We're going to skip the first stitch and starting in the second and using only the front loop of each of these stitches, we're going to work a slip stitch. Again, this is one of those stitches you want to make sure that you're not super tight with the stitches. If you are, it is going to pull very tightly. So you want to be careful as you crochet this across that you're not pulling it too tightly. You also don't want it to be exceedingly loose either. Just a normal tension should work fine for this. So go ahead and work this all the way across the row, and I will show you how the row ends. Once we get to the end of the row, go ahead and work a slip stitch in to that turning chain. All right, so let's go ahead and turn for row number 4, which is going to be row 2 of the low front ridge, or LFR abbreviation. Okay, we're going to chain 1. Now we're not going to work in that turning chain, because if we did that, we'll be adding stitches, and we don't want to do that. We want to try to keep our stitch count as constant as possible. All right, so we're going to work in the remaining loop of the stitches right there. You can see that pretty clearly. We're going to work single crochets in each stitch across. So by doing this, our chain, or our stitch count of 126 will remain constant. So far in these 4 rows, it has been constant. So go ahead and work those single crochets, and let me show you what we're doing. It's creating this lovely ridge right here, which is going to frame the cable that we're going to work after we complete this row. Make sure you work row 4 all the way to the last stitch, and let's go ahead and turn. And you can see this beautiful border that we have made. Okay, it's a raised border. Okay, so now we're going to chain 1, and we're going to begin row 5, which is the cable stitch. It's actually row 1 of 2 rows that we're going to work to make the cable stitch. We're going to start by crocheting a single crochet in the first stitch. Now this is not part of the cable stitch itself. I'm going to be starting that in the next stitch. So we're going to make another single crochet, 1 in the next stitch, and we're going to chain 3. Skip the next 2 stitches and then single crochet in that next stitch. Now we're going to turn to work in the chain. So just work along the side of the chains here. 1 single crochet in each chain, and then we work a slip stitch in that next stitch. Now we're going to turn again, and we're going to pull the cable part down to reveal those 2 stitches that we just skipped. Single crochet in each of those, and that is the first of the cables in this row. Let's do that again. Chain 3, skip the next 2 stitches, 1, 2. These are stitches that haven't been used yet, and single crochet in that next stitch. Turn to work in the chains. Work 1 single crochet in each of those chains. Let's try that again. There we go. Make sure you have 3 stitches. Slip stitch in that next stitch, and then turn again, and we can bring that cable down to reveal those 2 stitches that we skipped. Single crochet in each of those. Now I'm going to do this one more time because I know there are many of you out there who maybe never have seen this stitch before. Chain 3, skip the next 2 stitches, single crochet, get it in the right place, single crochet in that next stitch, turn to work in the chains, 1 single crochet in each chain, slip stitch in that next stitch, go ahead and turn again, and single crochet in those 2 stitches that we just skipped. And this will be better defined even once we work the row that completes this stitch. So this is what we're going to do. So go ahead and repeat that all the way across, and I'll show you how the row ends. At the end of the row, you should have 1 stitch left. Just work a single crochet in that last stitch. And this is what you should have. Let's go ahead and turn to begin row number 6, which is row number 2 of the cable stitch. We're going to chain 1. We're going to single crochet in that first single crochet. Now after that, we're going to be working behind the cables, and as we do this, we're going to work 2 single crochets in the next stitch and then 1 in the next. And notice that I did have to, just pull back on this cable a little bit to find that single crochet. So again, 2 single crochets in the next stitch and then 1 in the next. 2 in the next stitch and 1 where that cable again was connected in the next. Okay, so let me go ahead and turn and show you the front side. So as we work across, be sure that you have a total of 3 single crochets behind every cable. Again, that does not include the first stitch that we worked individually, and we'll do the same at the end of the row with the last stitch. So by doing that, we are going to maintain our stitch count of 126 stitches. At the end of this row, we're going to work a single crochet in that last single crochet and in the turning chain in that space, just like that. It's a little bit tight, but you can go ahead and work that in. You should have a total stitch count of 126 stitches, and you should have a total of 41 cables completed. Now we are going to go on to rows 7 and 8, which is going to be a repeat of what we worked for rows 3 and 4 with the low front ridge. So I'm going to go ahead and get you started with the chain 1. Remember, skip that first stitch and working only in the front loops. Work slip stitches all the way across the row and in the turning chain as well. Again, maintaining stitch count. And then after you work all the way across the row, we're going to turn, chain 1, and we're going to work single crochets in each remaining loop of the single crochets all the way across. And again, you should have 126 stitches when you complete that row as well. So go ahead and complete rows 7 and 8, which are rows 1 and 2 of the low front ridge, or LFR. After completing 8 rows, this is what you should have. Now for rows 9 and 10, they are simply chain 1 and single crochet in each single crochet across the row. Do not work in the turning chains of each of these rows. Okay, so by not working in the turning chains, we are going to maintain our stitch count of 126 stitches. This is what you should have after completing 10 rows. Now for row 11, we are going to begin making the small hearts. We will start row 11 with the chain 1, and we're going to single crochet into the first 4 stitches. In the next stitch, we're going to make a popcorn. We're going to make that by working 4 single crochets into the same space. Then we're going to pull up the loop and reinsert our hook into the first of the 4 single crochets to work together. Put the loop on the hook, pull it back into place, and pull through and give it a chain. Now we're going to work 8 single crochets, 1 in each of the next 8 stitches. After working those 8 stitches, we're going to work another popcorn by working again 4 single crochets into the same space, pull up a loop, take the hook and insert it again into the first of the 4 stitches, Put the loop onto the hook. Make sure you pull the loop down to normal size, pull through, and give it a chain, and another popcorn is made. So that is going to be the repeat all the way across the row. 1 single crochet in the next 8 stitches, and then a popcorn in the next stitch. So work that all the way across, and I will show you how the row ends. After working this all the way across the row, we're going to finish our last popcorn and single crochet in the remaining 4 stitches. So let's go ahead and take a look at our row. And you should have a total of 14 popcorns begun. And again, the stitch count remains constant at 126 stitches. So that's including the popcorn. Now for row number 12, we're going to chain 1. And this is an easy row. We're just going to work single crochets in each stitch across. But let me take extra care to show you how you work these single crochets in the popcorn. We just work a single crochet in that chain 1 space. Now do be careful, because this little line here is still part of the popcorn stitch. It's a very common error to add an additional stitch in there. You don't want to do that. You just want to work in the top of the popcorns. After that, we work again 1 in each of the next 8 stitches, and I'll go ahead and just do this repeat with you. Make sure I get all the strands there. I'm gonna go ahead and work 1 repeat with you so that there's no doubt as to where you put these stitches. And if you ever find that you may be putting more stitches in the row, the best way to verify one way or the other is to do a quick stitch count. So we come to the next popcorn and we work in the top of that stitch right like that. And again, this little section here is part of the popcorn, so go on to the next stitch. So go ahead and work this all the way across the row. This is what you should have after completing 12 rows. Now we're going to work row number 13 with the chain 1, and we are going to single crochet in the first 3 stitches. After that, we are going to work a popcorn in the next stitch with those 4 single crochets worked into the same space. Pull up a loop, insert into the first of those 4 stitches, pull that on through and give it a chain, single crochet in that next stitch, and the popcorn in the next stitch. After working those 4 single crochets, go ahead and make that next popcorn and give it a chain. So just want to show you how these look, and you need to make sure that when you work this row, this is 2 rows after this row with the first popcorn, make sure that these are on either side of the popcorn. Okay, that's very important. Now we're going to single crochet into each of the next 6 stitches. Okay, so after those 6 stitches, we're going to do that again. We're going to work a popcorn in the next stitch. And single crochet in the next stitch, and a popcorn in the next stitch. All right, so that is going to be your repeat across the row. Single crochet in each of the next 6 stitches, popcorn in the next, single crochet in the next, and a popcorn in the next, being sure that the popcorns we work are on either side of the popcorn from 2 rows previous. Go ahead and work that all the way across. At the end of this row, you should have 3 stitches left. So work single crochets in each of those 3 stitches. Let's go ahead and take a look at how this should be coming out here. All right, so now we're ready to turn and work row 14, which is very much like row 12. We are going to work a chain 1 and then a single crochet in each stitch across, and I am going to work over the heart section with the popcorn so that you don't accidentally add stitches in here. So we're going to work carefully the top of that popcorn, which is that chain 1 stitch. Remember now, this is part of the popcorn. Then we work the next single crochet and then the next popcorn, and then we are back to the 6 single crochets in the center. So go ahead and work row number 14. So this is what you should have after completing 14 rows. Now for row 15, we are going to chain 1 and we're going to single crochet in the first 2 stitches. After that, we're going to work a popcorn in the next stitch. Make sure you close that with a chain. Single crochet in the next stitch, and then a popcorn in the next stitch. Okay, and now we're going to single crochet in each of the next 6 stitches. And then we're going to work those popcorns again. So we're going to work a popcorn in the next stitch. Those 4 single crochets. Single crochet in that next stitch, and then a popcorn in the next stitch. And then we resume the repeat again by single crocheting in each of the next 6 stitches. So this is what this is going to look like. Now if you turn it vertically, you will see half of the heart completed right here. Okay, so what I want you to do is continue to work this all the way across the row. At the end of the row, you're going to have additional stitches. Let's take a look at that. So after working your last popcorn, you're going to have 4 additional single crochets at the end of the row. And after you finish row 15, I want you to turn, chain 1, and just single crochet in each single crochet and popcorn across. So go ahead and complete rows 15 and 16. This is what you should have after completing 16 rows. Now I'm going to start you on row 17, which is another PC row. We're going to start with a chain 1, and then we're going to single crochet in the first 3 stitches. This is actually the same as row 13. After those 3 single crochets, we're going to work a popcorn in the next stitch. Followed by a single crochet in the next stitch and a popcorn in the next stitch. And single crochet in the next 6 stitches. And then we work those popcorns again. And I'll go ahead and work those for you. 4 stitches in that next stitch. Single crochet in the next stitch. And then single crochet in each of the next 4 stitches. And then it repeats all over again, working single crochets in each of the next 6 stitches. Let's go ahead and pause and take a look at that. So the repeat is 6 stitches and then a popcorn, 1 single crochet and then a popcorn, and this is how the hearts are starting to form. So go ahead and work that all the way across the row, and once you complete row 17, go ahead and chain 1 and turn and work single crochets in each stitch all the way across. This is what we should have after completing 18 rows. I'll go ahead and turn so that you can see the hearts forming. Now to begin row 19, this is actually a repeat of row 11. We're going to chain 1. We're going to single crochet in the first 4 stitches. And then after that, we're going to work a popcorn in the next stitch. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches worked in that space. And that completes the heart shape. Okay, this might be a little tricky to see in this light, but after we work that, we're going to work 8 single crochets. And that's 8. And the next single crochet, actually a popcorn in that next single crochet. Okay, and that is going to be your repeat all the way across the row. We're going to work 1 single crochet in the next 8 stitches and then a popcorn in the next. And do make sure that when you work that popcorn, that it is in between the 2 popcorns from row 17. So go ahead and work that row. That's row 19. And then afterwards, work row 20, which is just going to be working a chain 1 and a single crochet in each stitch. So again, we'd have the back side facing for row 20. So go ahead and work a single crochet in each stitch and popcorn across. All right, this is what we should have after completing 20 rows. Now I'm going to give a large assignment. For rows 21 and 22, we're simply going to work 2 more rows of just single crochet in each stitch. After that, for rows 23 through 28, we're going to go back and we're going to repeat rows 3 and 4 of the low front ridge, 5 and 6 of the cable stitch, and 7 and 8 another set of the low front ridge. So that would be complete or repeat rows 3 through 8 again. And again, that will be on this side after you complete the 2 rows of the single crochet. Now, if you need stitch support for how to work these stitches again, look across the bottom of the screen, and I will put the time mark where you can go back and review rows 3 through 8. So go ahead and complete that, and then I'll show you the next stitch. This is what you should have after completing 28 rows. I'm going to go ahead and turn it this way so that you can see the hearts and how they formed. All right, so now we are ready to go to the popcorn section. And the first thing we're going to do, very important, is we're going to change to our larger hook, just one size up from whatever you were using. So after changing that hook, we're going to chain one, and we're going to work a single crochet in that first stitch, chain one, skip the next stitch, then we're going to work a popcorn in the next stitch, and we work the popcorns the same way by working 4 single crochets in that stitch. Pull up a loop, insert the yarn, and go ahead and complete the popcorn. Skip the next stitch, a single crochet in the next stitch, chain one, skip the next stitch, popcorn in the next stitch, and this is what we are going to repeat all the way across the row. Okay, so we're going to work the popcorn, skip a stitch, single crochet, chain one, skip a stitch, and then a popcorn, and repeat that all the way across, and I'll show you what I have at the end of the row. After working that across the row, you should have 1 stitch left. Go ahead and work a single crochet in that last stitch. You should have a total of 31 popcorns in this row. Let's go ahead and turn. Chain one, and this is for row number 30, which is row number 2 of the popcorn stitch. Go ahead and single crochet in that first stitch. Chain one. We're going to skip the next stitch, single crochet in top of that popcorn stitch, chain one, single crochet in the next chain one space, chain one, skip the next stitch, single crochet in the top of the next popcorn, and that's going to be your repeat all the way across the row. Chain one, and then single crochet in the next chain one space, chain one, single crochet in the next chain one, which is at the top of the popcorn. All right, so go ahead and crochet that all the way across the row. At the end of the row, you should have 1 stitch left. Go ahead and work a single crochet, and notice that I'm not chaining one in between those, just another single crochet. And let's take a look at what we have after completing 30 rows. You can see those popcorn starting to form. All right, so now for row number 31, we're going to chain one, single crochet in that first stitch, chain one, and then we're going to single crochet in the next chain one space, chain one, and then popcorn in the next chain one space. And this should be in between the 2 popcorns from the 2 rows previous. Okay, single crochet in that next chain one space, chain one, popcorn in the next chain one space. So that is going to be the repeat all the way across the row. We complete this popcorn. So we're going to popcorn in the next chain one space. Chain one is at the top of the popcorn. Single crochet in the next chain one space. Chain one, popcorn with that chain one on top in the next chain one space, and then single crochet, chain one, popcorn, etc. all the way across. And do make sure, like I said, that these are alternating in between the 2 popcorns from the previous rows. At the end of row 31, just work a single crochet in that last stitch, and you still have the same number of popcorns, which is going to remain constant at 31. All right, so now for row 32, we're going to chain one, single crochet in that first stitch, single crochet at the top of the next popcorn or the chain one space, chain one, single crochet in the next chain one space, chain one, single crochet in top of the next popcorn, which is also a chain one space, chain one, single crochet in the next chain one space, etc., all the way across the row. Go ahead and let you get a good look at that, and I'll show you how the row ends. At the end of row 32, we're just going to work a single crochet in that last stitch and turn, and this is what you should have after completing 32 rows. Now for popcorn, row number 5, which is also row 33 in the project, is pretty much the same as row 1 of the popcorn, which again is, let's see, row 29. But it's done a little differently because we're working in the chain one spaces instead of counting stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and work this row with you. This is row 33. We start with a chain one, single crochet in that first stitch, chain one, and now we make a popcorn in that next chain one space. And single crochet in the next chain one space, chain one, and then again popcorn in the next chain one space, making sure that our popcorns are alternating with the popcorn 2 rows below. All right, so let's go ahead and let me show you how this looks, and you can see them, you know, alternating as we go. Just for clarity, let me show you how row 33 ends. I work a single crochet, a chain one, skip the next stitch, and a single crochet in the last stitch, just like that. Row 34 begins by working a single crochet in that first stitch, and then a single crochet into the first chain one space, chain one, single crochet in the top of that popcorn, chain one, and single crochet in the next chain one space, and you're going to work that all the way across the row. At the end of row 34, after you work the last chain one and single crochet in the chain one space, just work a single crochet in that last stitch. Let's go ahead and turn, take a look at what we have after 34 rows. Now I have a longer assignment for you. So we're going to repeat rows 30 through 34 4 times, and then repeat rows 31 through 33 once more. This is going to be for rows 35 through 53. But if you need stitch support, look across the bottom of the screen, and you can go back to that time mark and review rows 31, 32, 33, and 34. This is what we have after completing 53 rows. Now you may notice that the popcorn edging might be pulling in just a tad bit. Don't worry too much about that. Blocking will help this a lot. And we also are going to be working perimeter rounds, which will help to mediate that without a problem. Okay, so now we're going to work the row to discontinue the popcorn stitch. And before we do that, we need to do something very important. We need to drop the larger size hook, and we need to go back to our smaller gauge hook. And in my case, that's the H or 8 or 5.00 millimeter. Very, very important before you go forward on row number 54. Okay, now to begin row 54, this is again the row that will discontinue the popcorn stitch. I've gone ahead and I have chained 1, and working only in the chain 1 spaces, we're going to work 2 single crochets in each chain 1 space and in each top of the popcorn, which is also a chain 1 space. We'll go ahead and work that all the way across the row. Just like that. When you come to the last chain 1 space, work only one single crochet in that chain one space, and then one in the last stitch of the row. You should have a total of 126 stitches at the end of this row. Let's go ahead and turn and take a look again at how our blanket should look. Okay, now I'm going to give you a small assignment. It's a little bit different than the last one when we were working the cable. We're going to repeat rows 3 and 4, which is the low front ridge rows, 5 and 6, which is the cabling rows. And then we're going to repeat rows 5 and 6 again. And then we're going to repeat rows 3 and 4 again with the low front ridge. So what we're going to be forming here is the low front ridge, and then we're going to work 2 cables. So 4 rows of cables. Cables row 1 and 2, 2 times. And then we're going to frame that with another low front ridge, which is rows 3 and 4 again. So go ahead and work those rows. If you need stitch support, I'll go ahead and put across the bottom of the screen again, where you can go back to rows 3, 4, 5, and 6. This is what you should have after completing 62 rows. So rows 55 through 62, just to review again, were the 2 rows of the low front ridge, 2 rows of the cable stitch, 2 rows of the cable stitch, and 2 more rows of the low front ridge. Now for rows 63 and 64, they're going to be pretty easy. We're just going to chain 1 and work a single crochet in each stitch all the way across the row. Do not work in the turning chain, just work in the single crochet. So go ahead and work those 2 rows of single crochet. Now for row 65, we're going to start the big hearts. We're going to chain 1, and we're going to single crochet in the first 8 stitches. After working those 8 single crochets, we're going to work a popcorn stitch in the next stitch. A single crochet in the next stitch, and a popcorn in the next stitch. Just like that. After working those 2 popcorn, we're going to work a single crochet in each of the next 15 stitches. After completing those 15 single crochets, we work the popcorn again. 1 popcorn in the next stitch. Single crochet in the next stitch, and then a popcorn in the next stitch. And this is what you're going to work all the way across the row. 15 crochets, 1 in each of the next 15 stitches, and then a popcorn, a single crochet, and then a popcorn. Row 65 ends by working single crochets in each of the last 7 stitches. Okay? And you should have a total of 7 large hearts begun. So do make sure that your stitch count is all on par here with me. If not, it could be that maybe stitches were miscounted in between the hearts. You want to make sure that this row is set up correctly, because that will be the center motif of this entire project. Okay, now for row number 66, we are going to turn, and we are simply going to chain 1, and we're going to single crochet in each stitch and each popcorn across. I'm going to do the first popcorns with you just as another reminder. I know I am repeating myself many times in this video, but that's how, at least that's how I learned, is by hearing things repeated more than once or twice. Okay, so we're going to work in the top of the popcorn. Then we're going to work in the next single crochet. Again, emphasizing don't add any stitches in here or it will throw the stitch count off. Single crochet in that single crochet, and then in the top of the next popcorn. And then again, this is part of the popcorn. Do not work here. Go to the next single crochet and then work across the row in that manner. And just a reminder at the end of row 66, as we're working on this popcorn heart section, do not work in the turning chains. So now to start row 67, we start with a chain 1, and we are going to single crochet in the first 7 stitches. Okay, so you should be 1 stitch away from the single crochet that's in the top of the popcorn. We're going to work a popcorn stitch in this space. So that's those 4 single crochets, and complete that popcorn. Single crochet in the next stitch, popcorn in the next stitch, single crochet in the next stitch, and popcorn in the next stitch. Okay, and now we're going to single crochet until we're within 1 stitch of the next popcorn stitch. So from following that last popcorn, we've worked 13 single crochets, 1 in each of the next 13 stitches, and then we're going to repeat the popcorns again. We're going to work a popcorn in the next stitch, a single crochet in that next stitch, a popcorn in the next stitch, again 4 single crochets, a single crochet in the next stitch, and a popcorn in the next stitch. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at that. So, as we work these popcorns, it's popcorn, then a single crochet, popcorn, single crochet, popcorn, and do observe how these popcorns are staggered. They're in between the popcorns from 2 rows previous. Then there will be 13 single crochets, and then popcorn, single crochet, popcorn, single crochet, popcorn. So go ahead and work that all the way across the row. At the end of the row, we're going to single crochet in the last 6 stitches. So this is the way your hearts should look at this point. Okay, now we're going to chain 1 and turn, and we're going to go on to row 68, and this is another one of those rows where we just work single crochets in each stitch, making sure that when we get to those popcorn, we only work in the chain 1 of the popcorn and nowhere else. I'll go ahead and work those with you again as a review. So we just work in the top of the popcorn there, and then we work in the single crochet in the next top of the popcorn, and in the next single crochet, and in the top of the popcorn. Make sure we get it located correctly. There we go. And then we begin working in the single crochets, not in the side of the popcorn. All right, so go ahead and work this all the way across the row. This is the heart section after completing row 68. Now for row 69, we are going to chain 1, and we're going to single crochet in the first 6 stitches. After that, we are going to work a popcorn, you should be getting really good at these at about this point. And then we're going to work a single crochet in the next stitch, and then a popcorn in the next. And notice that they are alternating between the popcorns 2 rows previous. And then after that popcorn, we work another single crochet, and then another popcorn, single crochet in the next stitch, and then finally another popcorn. All right, let's take a pause and look at what we have. So notice you have 1 popcorn, single crochet, popcorn, single crochet, popcorn, single crochet, and a popcorn. After that, we're going to single crochet into the next 11 stitches. After working those 11 single crochets, we again work the popcorns. So this basically is the repeat. Okay, again, popcorn, single crochet, popcorn, single crochet, popcorn, single crochet, popcorn, and make sure that these are alternating with the popcorn 2 rows previous. And then we do 1 single crochet in each of the next 11 stitches, and then begin the popcorns again. Again, 4 popcorns added to each heart. At the end of row 69, you're going to have 5 stitches left. So go ahead and work single crochets in each of those stitches. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we have after 69 rows. All right, now for row number 70, we are going to turn, chain 1, and this is just like the other rows that follow a popcorn row. We're just going to work a single crochet in each stitch and popcorn across the row. Again, be careful not to add in extra stitches after those popcorns. So I'll go ahead and work this for you once. Working the top of the popcorn, and then in the next single crochet, and then in the top of the next popcorn, and then in the next single crochet, etc. So go ahead and work this all the way across the row. So go ahead and work this all the way across the row. This is what you should have after completing 70 rows. Now for row 71, we're going to start with the chain 1, and we are going to work in the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches. After that, we are going to work a popcorn, then a single crochet in the next stitch, followed by another popcorn, and a crochet, single crochet in that next stitch, another popcorn, single crochet in the next stitch, and then one more popcorn. So we'll be working 4 popcorns to the heart in this row with, of course, single crochets in between. And then we're going to work 11 single crochets in between the heart. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. So as you can see, these popcorns are still staggered in between from the popcorns from 2 rows previous, and they are kind of downshifted a stitch. Okay, so go ahead and work that again. Popcorn, single crochet, popcorn, single crochet, popcorn, single crochet, popcorn, and then single crochet in the next 11 stitches. Make sure you start the next popcorn 1 stitch before where the popcorns begin. So go ahead and work that across the row. This is what you should have after completing 71 rows. Now we're going to chain 1 and turn, and for row 72 is just another row of working 1 single crochet in each stitch or popcorn across. So go ahead and work that row. This is what you should have after completing 72 rows. Now for row 73, this is another popcorn heart row. We're going to work single crochets into the first 4 stitches, and then we begin our popcorns. And again, we are going to have 4 popcorns added to our heart with this row as well. We're getting close to the center of the heart here. Actually, this is the center of the heart. Okay, so then we work a single crochet, another popcorn, single crochet, another popcorn, another single crochet, and one more popcorn. Just like that. And then we work single crochets in the next 11 stitches. So just so I'm clear, popcorn, single crochet, popcorn, single crochet, popcorn, single crochet, popcorn, and again they are staggered between the popcorns 2 rows before that, and then we work single crochets in the next 11 stitches. So go ahead and work row 73 all the way across. This is how the heart should look after 73 rows. Row 74 is another row of single crochet. So single crochet in each stitch and in each popcorn across. This is what you should have after 74 rows. Now on to row 75. I'm going to go ahead and start this with the chain 1, and we're going to single crochet into the first 3, 4, 5 stitches. Make sure that when we start this next popcorn that you're past the first popcorn 2 rows down. This is going to be staggered in between these two. And we're going to have 4 popcorns in each heart for this row as well. So that's 1 popcorn, then a single crochet, and then another popcorn, and then a single crochet, and another popcorn, make sure we get that in the first of the 4, a single crochet in the next stitch, and then 1 more popcorn. Okay, let's go ahead and stop and take a look. So when we look at it this way, there we go, you can see the shape of the heart, and now this 4 rows of popcorns is going kind of up, so it's shifted a little bit to the left or the right if you're watching the left-handed version. Okay, and then we're going to work single crochets in each of the next 11 stitches, and then repeat that again. So go ahead and work that all the way across the row. At the end of row 75, this row ends by working 6 single crochets. So let's go ahead and turn, and for row 76, you guessed it, it's another single crochet row. We start with a chain 1 and single crochet in each stitch or top of popcorn all the way across the row. This is what you should have after completing 76 rows. And I'll turn this just a bit so that you can see the shape of the heart, how it's coming together. All right, so now we're going to work row 77 with the chain 1, and we are going to single crochet into the first 6 stitches. And notice that the last single crochet is kind of in line with the popcorn from 2 rows down. All right, so now we're going to start our popcorns. Do 1 in the next stitch, and we will have 4 popcorns per heart in this row as well. Okay, and then a single crochet, and the next stitch, a popcorn in the next stitch, and single crochet in the next stitch, a popcorn in the next stitch, a single crochet in the next stitch, and another popcorn. All right, let's stop and take a look. Okay, So you can see the popcorns here. After that, we're going to work single crochets in each of the next 11 stitches, and then you'll return to working those popcorns with the single crochets in between. So go ahead and work row 77. This is what you should have after 77 rows. Now for row 78, it's just going to be another row of working single crochets. Of course, starting with the chain 1, single crochets in each stitch and popcorn in the row. This is what you should have after completing 78 rows. Now for row 79, we're going to chain 1, and we are going to single crochet I just needed to count to make sure, but we're going to single crochet in the first 7 stitches. After that, we are going to work popcorn. And then we're going to single crochet in the next stitch. And then popcorn in the next stitch. Single crochet in the next stitch. And then work a popcorn in the next stitch. So we're only going to work 3 popcorns in this row, and this is what that will look like. Okay, so now we're going to work single crochets. So we're going to work single crochets in the next 13 stitches. I just want to make sure I gave you an accurate count, and then we begin the popcorns again. So let me show you that again. So it's popcorn, single crochet, popcorn, single crochet, popcorn, and then we single crochet in the next 13 stitches, and then we do it again. Popcorn, single crochet, popcorn, single crochet, and a popcorn. So make sure that you're working them in between, that they are staggered with the popcorns 2 rows below. So this is what you should have after completing 79 rows, and you can see the beautiful heart. We only have a row here of popcorn after we finish this next row. So for row number 80, we are going to again chain 1 and single crochet in each stitch and popcorn across. This is what you should have after completing 80 rows. Now this next row is going to be our last popcorn row for the large heart, and we can start with a chain 1, and we're going to single crochet Okay, so those were 8 single crochets. So single crochet in the first 8 stitches, and then we begin our popcorns. Popcorn in the next stitch. Single crochet in the next stitch, and popcorn in the next stitch. Now we're going to work
single crochets across. We're going to work 15 of these, and that is going to be your repeat. Popcorn, single crochet popcorn, and make sure that it's in between the 3 popcorns from 2 rows below, and then we work 15 single crochets. So go ahead and repeat that all the way across the row. This is what you should have after completing 81 rows. So you should have the completed hearts. Okay, now for the next 3 rows, we're going to just work rows of single crochet across each stitch. So what we're going to do is work rows 82 through 84, just working 1 single crochet in each stitch or popcorn. You're only going to have single crochets and popcorns for this row. This is row 82, then rows 83 and 84, just single crochet in each stitch or single crochet across. So go ahead and work those 3 rows. This is what you should have after completing 84 rows. And then when we turn this vertically, we can see the beautiful heart right there. And I just love this hand-dyed yarn for this project. It just adds an extra element to it that's just kind of a wow factor for me personally. But again, you can use whichever yarn that you like on this. Just be sure that you size your hook accordingly. Now I'm going to give you a larger assignment for rows 85 to 92. We're going to go back and repeat 2 rows of the low front ridge, 2 rows of the cable stitch, 2 more rows of the cable stitch, and then 2 rows of the low front ridge. If you need support on how to do these stitches again, please look across the bottom and I'll take you back to where you can see how those stitches are formed. All right, so go ahead and work these 8 rows onto the other side of the hearts, and then I will give you another assignment after that. So this is what you should have after completing 92 rows. So let's go ahead and take a larger view of this. I'm going to turn it sideways for you so we can see the small hearts, the popcorn section, and the large heart framed with the 2 cable rows and the low front ridges on both sides. Okay, so now for rows 93 through 117, we're going to go back and do the popcorn section, and that would be repeating rows 29 through 53. Okay, so if you need help on how to do that again, please look across the bottom and I'll put the time marker. You can go back to row 29. Now remember, when you switch to working the popcorn, make sure that you go back to your larger crochet hook so that you can work these popcorns. If you forget to change the hook, this is going to really pull in much smaller and it's not going to be a good thing. So make sure that you upsize your hook for this section, and then I'll try to remind you to go back to your regular gauge hook when we return to finish the rest of this project. But for now, go ahead and start working those popcorn rows, and I will show you what I have once I complete them. After completing 117 rows, we have the popcorn section complete, and I'll just give you another quick side view of this beautiful blanket. It's really coming together. I'm loving the drape of this yarn. Okay, now on to row 118, and this is where we work the row to discontinue the popcorn. And a very important step before we do that, we're going to change back to our smaller gauge hook, which we're going to drop the size I or 9 or 5.50 millimeter crochet hook, and we're going to pick up the H or 8 or 5.00 millimeter crochet hook. Very important. Now we're ready to start row 118, and this is going to be worked the same way that row 54 was worked when we discontinued the popcorn. Chain 1
and working only in the chain 1 spaces, we're going to work 2 single crochets in each chain 1 space, and that includes that chain 1 in the top of the popcorn. Okay, so we're going to work that all the way across until we get to the very end of the row, and just like we did for row 54, we're going to work 1 single crochet in the last chain 1 space. So 1 single crochet in that last chain 1 space, and then 1 single crochet in the last stitch. And that way we will continue to maintain our stitch count. Once you complete row 118, I have one last and final large assignment. We're going to go back, and if you want, you can look across the bottom of the screen, and I will put that time mark in here again for you. For rows 119 through 144, we're going to repeat rows 3 through 28. So rows 3 through 28 will include the low front ridge rows, the cable rows, low front ridge, the small popcorn rows, and then again the low front ridge, cable, and then 2 rows of the low front ridge. So go ahead and work those, and then we will continue on to our last row and then to our finishing border. I have finished these repeats, and we are getting ready to work the perimeter round. So let me go ahead and show you what this looks like going across. You have the big hearts, and then the other side with the section with the small hearts. So now we have the front side facing us, and we had just worked that last low front ridge, rows 1 and 2. So now we are going to begin the perimeter round, which is where we're just going to work single crochets all the way around. It's going to be easy on the straight ends because you're just putting 1 stitch in each stitch, but working along the row ends is going to be a little bit different, and I'll work that with you so that there is clarity in the pattern. All right, so we chain 1 to begin this perimeter round, and just work a single crochet in each stitch all the way until you get to the next corner. So go ahead and work that, and I'll show you how to work and how to turn the corners and how to work along the row end sides. After working a cross, we're going to chain 2, turn. I'm going to work a single crochet in the same place as the last stitch, and this helps to form a corner. And then we are going to work single crochets evenly across the row. The most important part of this is that the stitches are evenly crocheted. They're not so close together that you get waviness, but they're also not so far apart that you have a tightly pulled, tightly pulled fabric. And that's going to amount to about 1 single crochet per row end for most of these stitches. Of course, when you work over the low front ridge, you're not going to have them that close because the 2 rows were so closely crocheted together. So go ahead and crochet this evenly across. I will give you my stitch count at the end of this row. However, that is not necessarily a real hard and fast number for this particular design, because the row or round rather that we're going to be working after this is very easily adjustable. So go ahead and work these single crochets across, but do take note of the number that you get as you go across, because you're going to want that number to match the other side as closely as possible when we work the other side. So go ahead and work this across to the next corner. For the record, after working across the row ends, my stitch count is 132 stitches. Again, if you have a few more or just a few less, don't let that disturb you too much as long as the stitching looks even across. So now we're going to turn again with the chain 2, and I'm going to work in that same stitch as I worked the last one, and then I'm going to begin working in the row ends, or not the row ends, I'm sorry, in the foundation chain. I'm going to skip that first stitch because I've worked it in the same space as the last stitch, and then just work in the remaining foundation chain as you go across the row. Okay, and then when you get to the next corner, also chain 2, turn, single crochet in the same space as the last stitch, and then work across the row ends just as you did here, and then we'll join at the end of the round. After working across the other row ends, we are going to chain 2 and join with a slip stitch to the top of that very first single crochet. After joining to the first stitch of the first round, I want you to do something very important. That is change to a size G or 6 or 4.00 millimeter. This is the smallest hook, and we have not used this hook yet in this throw. So this is going to make the final lace round just much more dainty. So I'm going to go ahead and turn as well. So you're going to have the back side of this throw facing you, and that is deliberate because I believe the back side of the stitches that we're going to work now just look better when the back side is showing. So we're going to chain 1, and in that space where we joined, we're going to work a single crochet, chain 3, and a double crochet. We're also going to work one in the chain 2 space in that corner, and as you work around the blanket, make sure you work one of these in each of the corners. And that is a single crochet, chain 3, a double crochet, skip the next stitch, and in the next stitch we work the single crochet, chain 3, and a double crochet, skip the next stitch, and in the next stitch again single crochet, chain 3, and double crochet. And we're going to work this all the way around, skip the next stitch, and then work in that next stitch. Now work another one, skip the next stitch, and in the next we're going to work, and we call this the eyelet lace. It's single crochet, chain 3, and a double crochet worked in the same space. And when we look at the front side facing, you get the little eyelet effect. So go ahead and work that all the way around. At the end of the final round, we're going to join with a slip stitch to that first single crochet of the round. Go ahead and give it a chain and a tug, and clip a generous strand, so that will be much easier for hiding the strand with the yarn needle. Go ahead and hide your strands away with the yarn needle, and your project is complete.
Well, I hope you enjoyed making the Big Hearts Little Hearts baby blanket with me today. If you did, I would love to hear from you. Please feel free to comment in the comment section below. God bless. Bye-bye.